The story you were told in childhood is not a fairy tale. It is a forensic report of a crime that society has tried to erase for 200 years. The Snow White you know, with the jealous stepmother, the happy dwarfs, and the true love's kiss is a sanitized lie. A fraud constructed to protect your mind from a truth so brutal that most people prefer to keep sleeping rather than face it. But we are not here to sleep. What you carry in your memory is the 1937 Disney version. What we are going to dissect today is the original manuscript by the Brothers Grimm from 1812, a text that wasn't written to entertain children, but to warn them about a real and immediate danger. And the first thing you need to know will destroy the foundation of everything you thought you knew about family protection. In the original text, that woman looking into the mirror, the one who orders the huntsman to take the girl into the forest, was not a stepmother. The word written in Jacob Grimm's precise handwriting on the yellowed paper, preserved in the Berlin State Library, is Die Mutter, the mother. It was the biological mother who looked at her 7-year-old daughter, not a teenager, a 7-year-old child, and felt a hatred so deep that the girl's simple existence became unbearable, and she didn't just ask for death. The text is explicit and disturbing. She demanded that her own daughter's lungs and liver be brought back as proof. And when the huntsman tricked the queen by delivering animal organs, she didn't just throw them away. She sent them to the kitchen, she boiled them in salt, and she ate them, believing she was devouring her own daughter's vital essence. Does this sound grotesque? Does it sound far removed from your modern reality? This is where you are mistaken. The reason this story was altered over the centuries, changing the mother into a stepmother, is the same reason you tell yourself comfortable lies every day. We are terrified to admit that the source of our pain often comes from those who should protect us. We prefer the fantasy that evil is an intruder, an external stepmother, rather than something that is born inside our own home, inside our own blood, or worse, inside our own mind. The Brothers Grimm knew this. In the margins of their manuscripts, they scribbled 2 words, Mahnung und Warnung, reminder and warning. This tale is a code. Let's talk about the mirror. In your mind, it's a magical object with a speaking face. In the reality of the 16th century German court, polished glass mirrors were cutting-edge technology, costing more than entire estates. Owning a mirror of that size wasn't a sign of vanity. It was a demonstration of absolute political power. The mirror represented the ability to monitor one's own image in a world where a woman's appearance determined her market value, her alliances, and her survival. When the mirror says Snow White is the fairest, it isn't paying a compliment. It is announcing a death sentence. It is declaring a transfer of power. In those courts, when the daughter's beauty surpassed the mother's, the matriarch's influence collapsed. She ceased to be the center of marriage negotiations and became obsolete. That mother's hatred wasn't just female jealousy, it was existential panic. It was the fear of losing relevance, the fear of being replaced. And isn't that exactly what tortures you today? The silent dread that someone younger, faster, or better adapted will take your place and render you invisible. But if the castle was a political battlefield, the forest where Snow White flees was not an enchanted refuge. And here we arrive at one of the cruelest distortions of the story. The 7 dwarfs were never magical creatures. The historical archives of Hesse, the region where the Grimms collected their tales, document the existence of the kleinen Berglut, literally, small mountain people. Snow White, upon arriving at that cottage, doesn't find magical friends. She finds other outcasts. She finds children mutilated by the labor system, living on the margins of society. And what does she do? She doesn't sing with birds. She negotiates her survival. She becomes a domestic servant in exchange for protection, because in the Middle Ages and in real life, there is no free lunch. She jumped out of the frying pan of maternal envy into the fire of servitude by necessity. The hidden context here is painful because it removes the shield of fantasy. It shows that the world is not fair to innocence. Snow White's beauty, which should have been a blessing, became a target on her back. Her youth, which should have been celebrated, became the reason for the hatred of the one who should have loved her. And her saviors in the forest were just as much victims of the system as she was. We fail to understand this story, and we fail to understand our own lives, because we insist on looking at the scenery, not the structure. You think your problem is the mirror, Instagram, other people's opinions, but the problem is your dependence on external validation to feel you have value. You think you are safe in your forest of distractions, but you are just trading one type of slavery for another. The root of the problem is not the poisoned apple that comes later. The root is believing you can play the game of appearance and status without eventually becoming a victim of it. The biology of envy and the sociology of power are ruthless. And if you don't understand the rules of this game, you've lost before you even started playing. You need to understand the surgical precision of the attack. The queen didn't try to kill Snow White with brute force. She used seduction and comfort. The 3 assassination attempts in the original tale follow a pattern of predatory escalation that modern psychologists recognize instantly. First, the bodice laces. The promise of beauty that tightens until it chokes the breath out of you anxiety. Second, the poisoned comb. Something that should organize your thoughts, but inserts toxins directly into your head, the toxic ideologies and narratives you consume. And finally, the apple. The apple deserves special attention because it represents the ultimate trap. In medieval Germany, there was a documented technique among poisoners called the Judas fruit. They injected poison into only one half of the fruit. The queen eats the white, safe half to prove it is harmless, gaining the victim's trust, and hands the red, lethal half to Snow White. The color red, vibrant, appetizing, the irresistible visual stimulus. Sound familiar? This is exactly how modern addiction works. The world offers you something shiny, sweet, and seemingly safe, while hiding the poison in the cheap dopamine that paralyzes your will. And here is the alarming discovery that changes everything. The poison didn't kill Snow White. The substance described by the symptoms, muscle paralysis, dilated pupils, preservation of skin color, matches the effects of atropa belladonna, deadly nightshade. What the apple did was induce a state of catalepsy, suspended animation. This means that, very likely, Snow White was conscious inside the coffin. Imagine the absolute terror. Being trapped inside your own body, seeing and hearing everything, but unable to move a muscle, unable to scream, unable to react, trapped behind a wall of glass, separated from the world, being watched, but unable to touch anything. This is your reality right now. The glass coffin is not a fairy tale invention. It is your phone screen. It is the digital display case where you live in suspended animation. You are there. Your eyes are open, pupils dilated by the screen's glare, just like a belladonna overdose. You look alive, you look fresh in photos, but inside, your will is paralyzed. You watch life happen through the glass, but you don't participate in it. You are a spectator of your own existence. The cost of this inaction is terrible. In the original tale, the glass coffin served a triple function for the noble family: to prove death beyond doubt, to display the beauty of the family's genetic stock one last time, and to prevent anyone from examining the body too closely for signs of foul play. The glass creates an impenetrable barrier between the victim and the truth. While you remain paralyzed, consuming the apple of immediate comfort, you become an object. And objects don't have destinies, they have owners. If you don't break this glass, if you don't spit out this poison right now, what comes next is not a prince charming to save you. In the original version, the prince does not kiss Snow White to wake her up. He falls in love with the corpse. He negotiates with the dwarfs to buy the coffin because he wants to take that beautiful, inert body as a trophy to his castle. He didn't want a woman, he wanted a doll. That is what the world will do to you if you continue in this state of voluntary paralysis. It will buy you, use you, and put you in a corner like a trophy of obedience. The urgency here is not about improving your life. It is about recovering possession of your own body and your own mind before you are sold. Now, take a deep breath, because we are going to remove the last layer of anesthesia, protecting your ego. The most devastating lie told to you wasn't about the apple or the mirror. It was about the kiss. You have been conditioned to believe that if you fall, if you fail, if you become paralyzed by life, someone will come. A savior, a magical opportunity, a true love that will shatter the glass with the sweetness of a kiss, and everything will be okay. You are sitting there right now, in your own glass coffin, waiting for this moment, waiting for motivation to arrive, waiting for the economy to improve, waiting to feel ready. But in the manuscript of 1812, the kiss never happened. The prince, obsessed with the aesthetics of death, convinces the dwarfs to hand over the coffin. He doesn't want to save the woman. He wants to possess the object. He orders his servants to carry the glass box wherever he goes. Picture the scene. Snow White is not a person being loved. She is furniture being transported. She is a heavy load on other people's shoulders. And this is where the magic happens. It wasn't love that saved her. It was irritation, error, an accident. In one of the rawest versions collected by the Grimms, one of the servants, exhausted from hauling that dead weight up and down, stumbles. The violent jolt of the coffin causes Snow White's inert body to shake. And it was this physical violence. The escalation of your problem is exactly this. You run from discomfort, but discomfort is the only cure. The poison of the apple dopamine, laziness, victimhood only comes out with impact. You need to be shaken. Life needs to give you a jolt strong enough for the chunk of comfort, suffocating you to be expelled. The modern tragedy is that we have built shock absorbers for everything. We avoid the stumble. We create safe environments where nothing shakes us. And because of this, we keep sleeping, beautiful and useless inside the glass, being carried from one side to the other by circumstances, objects of someone else's will. The internal struggle you feel right now, that knot in your stomach while listening to this, is the coffin shaking. It is your conscience stumbling. You have two options. You can ask them to stop shaking the coffin so you can go back to sleep in peace, or you can use this jolt to spit out the apple and stand up. Because remember, when she wakes up, there is no celestial music. There is only cold reality and the immediate need to stand on her own two legs. The prince is not your savior. He is just the transport owner. If you wake up, the first thing you will realize is that you are being taken to a destination you did not choose. And the only way to change the route is to get out of the box now. The story ends where justice begins. And if you found the cannibalism at the start disturbing, the original ending will test your stomach and your resolve. At Snow White's wedding, the evil queen attends, and the punishment reserved for her is not prison or exile. The Grimms wrote that metal tongs were used to place iron shoes, glowing red-hot from the fire, onto the floor. The queen was forced to put them on and dance until she dropped dead. In medieval Germanic law, this specific execution was reserved for crimes against one's own blood. But here, in our practical philosophy, the red-hot iron shoes signify something much. The Grimm manuscript, with its notes of Mahnung and Warnung, didn't want you to be afraid of witches. It wanted you to be afraid of an unlived life, of potential devoured by the very mother of inertia. Snow White survived not because she was beautiful, but because the shock woke her up and justice was served. Now, look at your feet. What are you wearing? The velvet of comfort that leads you to the grave, or the iron of discipline that builds your empire? The choice is yours, but remember, the music has already started playing. If you have made it this far, if you have crossed the forest, the poison and the glass, and are ready to put on the necessary discipline, prove that you are part of the minority who finishes what they start. I want you to go to the comments now and write our password for today, a phrase that only those who heard the truth will understand. I accept the iron shows. Write this to mark the moment you stopped waiting for the prince's kiss and decided to walk on your own legs, no matter how much it burns. The fairy tale is over. Your real life starts now. See you in the next video.